From your vantage point in the UAE and the broader MENAT region, how would you describe the current level of CRO awareness and maturity among brands?
So in terms of this region, especially in the UAE and across GCC, and the pattern that I've seen, there is an awareness of conversion rate optimization. It's just that the maturity is evolving, and the partner has to play the right role in ensuring that every client is well educated in this. If the brand is relatively new, we always go for setting up the basic foundation from a technical perspective, from a visibility perspective. If the client has already done this for a couple of years, we try to understand, is it only from a brand perspective to drive traffic? Because that phase 2 is basically now to scale up the traffic to the website. And high spenders like an FMCG or a banking segment understand CRO at a deep level. A self-learning is being initiated like us and partners like you. Basically, we go joint in across and we keep educating the clients. That's how the maturity is increasing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the VWO podcast. Recognized as a finalist in the CMA Awards 2025 for Best B2B Podcast. With hours of in-depth conversations, we talk about using CRO to deliver what your users want, while also driving long-term growth for your business. Before we speak to our guest, here's a very quick overview of what we do. VWO is a leading experience optimization platform that enables you to gather in-depth user insights and build winning experiences across your website and mobile app. VWO Copilot, our AI champion, handles the heavy lifting of suggesting test ideas, creating variations, and finding insights, so you can focus on making strategic decisions that drive growth. Now, without further delay, let's jump right back to this conversation.
Hi everyone, welcome to the VWO podcast, where we speak with digital leaders and growth experts from around the world to understand how experimentation, user behavior, and data-driven thinking lead to real business impact. I'm Devon, your host for today. I run partnerships across EMEA, and I'm really happy to introduce today's guest, Mohammed Mohsin. Mohammed currently serves as business director at ACXIOM MENA, where he leads strategic initiatives across SEO, content, and conversion rate optimization. He works closely with enterprise clients and stakeholders to shape digital growth strategies, guide investment decisions, and align teams to deliver measurable business impact. With deep expertise in digital acquisition and optimization, Mo brings a leadership perspective on how organizations can connect SEO, user experience, and experimentation to drive sustainable growth. In this episode, we'll explore the current state of CRO adoption in the MENAT region, how behavioral insights can shift business mindsets, and what it takes for organizations to build experimentation into their digital growth strategy. Great. So, hello, Mohammed. Welcome to the VWO podcast. Very excited to have you here today.
Thank you for inviting, Devon. It's a pleasure.
Great. Before we dive into the deep content, I'd love just for our audience to get to know a little bit more about you and learn kind of who Mo is. Like, how have you ended up where you are today? So I wanted to ask, what did you think you would be when you were a child, when you were a kid? And how close or far away from that are you today?
So from a professional standpoint, I always wanted to become a lawyer. I was pushed to do my engineering. I went into technology and accidentally moved into digital. So I'm happy what I'm doing currently. So this is my journey.
So you wanted to be a lawyer, ended up having a background in engineering, and now here you are today running experimentation across all of the enterprise clients. Nice.
That's how the journey has started so far.
Yeah, it's always the windy road to the outcome that we want, right?
True.
Nice. And then what's something exciting that you're working on right now, personal or professional?
So in terms of at a personal level, I mean, not many people know I'm an angel investor. So I invest and basically evaluate, the startups and make an investment at a seed and a pre-seed level. But from a professional level, I work very closely with large enterprise accounts and clients. My passion is to basically meet clients, understand their business requirements, pain areas, and then map those to our products and service offerings that we have around with Axiom.
Do those worlds ever cross over?
Not really.
Not yet. Angel investing, really cool place to be. Um, I really want to ask, like, are there any like people I should be looking out for? Any interesting things up and coming? But I don't think this is the right place to ask that. So we'll follow up with that on another call. Great. And then, is there, because you mentioned there the clients that you're working with, the enterprise clients, is there a moment or a project in your CRO journey that made you think, yes, this is exactly why I love doing this?
So it's basically from a conversion rate optimization perspective, right? Every client bottom line and ask is basically get me sales, get me acquisition, get me leads. So irrespective whether the CRO is present or no, CRO is basically a facilitator which helps facilitate that journey in a more decision making format, I would say. So yes, all of our clients that we work from performance marketing, which is SEO, content, and CRO, this is a very simple ask for them: is that get us more leads, get us more acquisition, get us more conversions. That's the ask.
Have you ever walked into a conversation and people haven't asked that? Instead, they've asked about, we want to optimize for reducing maybe returns or something like that, or maybe something even more fun, like reducing friction across the whole website for an amazing user experience versus trying to just make money.
Lot of our clients also ask basically in terms of your UI UX, right? So from an SEO perspective, a lot of UI UX plays a very pivotal role when you're optimizing the journey, the full funnel journey, right from your awareness to consideration to the lower funnel. UI UX plays a very important journey. That is a part of the journey, but again, it bottom line comes back. Okay, once that optimization gets completed, improve my bottom line.
Yeah, and I guess the reason I like focusing on user experience and reducing the friction is because it's that has the real impact on growth and loyalty and therefore customer lifetime value versus just, oh, let's just increase conversion rate. It's the same thing, but maybe rather than looking at a first order metric, you're looking at more like second, third order ones to really understand why people are coming in and buying certain stuff or behaving a certain way they do. So from your vantage point in the UAE and the broader MENAT region, how would you describe the current level of CRO awareness and maturity among brands? And what do you see as the single biggest structural barrier to serious experimentation in the region today?
So in terms of this region, especially in the UAE and across the regions that I manage, so I manage across GCC. And the pattern that I've seen, there is an awareness of conversion rate optimization. It's just that the maturity is evolving, and it is so important for agencies and partners like us go back to the clients and explain of the intricacies and the beauty of CRO conversion rate optimization as a discipline and not just kind of one-off activities. It's so important, right? Because in the entire journey, what I've noticed is that whenever there is a budget allocation, it's always done based on certain end goals of acquisition, improving your revenue, scaling up the brand campaigns, and acquisition rate. So all of these journey is basically fixed on the bottom line is your acquisitions. And CRO plays a very pivotal role in improvising this journey. right from awareness to convert, from your awareness to consideration to your acquisition journey. So it's definitely evolving, and the partner has to play the right role in ensuring that every client is well educated in this.
When you're starting new business projects with clients, do you find that they are coming with a level of maturity in CRO, or they just know it exists or experimentation exists and they want to do it? Do you, when you're engaging with clients, is it typically you're taking them from like starters up to like more mature experimentation setups? Like, are you building a culture of experimentation and building that in-house with them? Or how does that typically work for you?
So initially, I mean, for my clients, it's predominantly it's at a very starter level. So we have to kind of handhold them, make them understand of what CRO is. Currently, if I were to put it very bluntly, the CRO for them is just an A/B testing. You know,
Yep.
it's a landing page A and landing page B. Compare it with your Google Analytics data. That's it. But there is much, much more outside of A/B testing. What CRO can offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So right
Do
now we
you,
are essentially in more of educating the client in a very systematic way of what CRO is and how CRO can help leverage your advertising spends.
when does CRO typically come into the conversation? Because we've mentioned that like full story from the SEO or the paid ads and that like driving traffic to the client's website. When do they start thinking about CRO?
So essentially, it's basically a maturity curve. So let's take few examples. So if the brand is relatively new, we always go for setting up the basic foundation. The website needs to be extremely strong from a technical perspective, from a discoverability perspective, and a visibility perspective. Right, that's where the SEO kind of comes in. Having the right content, having the right technical optimizations done across. That's the basic. If the client has already done this for a couple of years, right, and is investing into performance marketing with Google Ads, with TikTok, with Facebook, we try to understand, is it only from a brand perspective to try and drive traffic? Because that phase two is basically now to basically scale up the traffic to the website or to the app. Then the final stage is basically once the client reached to that maturity level where the basic things have been set out, hygiene is being set out, the content is right, the SEO discoverability and visibility is done. Now the client says that I'm going to kind of invest heavily into performance marketing. And that is where we basically bring in the intersection of conversion rate optimization to our clients. We introduce CRO to get them,
Okay, so
warm them up.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Because I always see the journey as getting the traffic to the website is one thing, but if the website's not converting, it's a bit of an issue. Or if the application isn't converting properly, that it's a bit of an issue. And also joining up that journey, because like we always think of the website is where the brand experience might begin. Or typically, like, oh, the website should reflect what we look like, or the app should reflect what we look like. But we forget that this user journey has started multiple touch points beforehand. So it kind of makes sense to hear you say that the CRO comes once people have those other motions in progress. It also makes sense from the revenue perspective, from the idea that paid ads very clearly has a direct correlation to traffic and acquisition. And then proving experimentation, typically it can have that impact of when people come in an immature way, they presume that CRO sits on the same sort of budget line as SEO or paid ads, and having that conversation to say, well, actually, this now we move beyond that, or like that level of maturity changes as you start applying, CRO theory, but also why we're doing experimentation. So that must be quite fun. It must be quite fun watching your clients mature like that and with those aha moments.
Absolutely. And our clients journey with our clients is approximately about 4+ years on an average. So we get that opportunity to kind of introduce the right product, at the right timeline.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Talking of timelines, then, do you typically see clients come to you with an existing tech stack? So maybe they're coming in with a behavioral insights tool, like heat maps, session recordings, maybe surveys. Um, do they come to you with that first, or will they come to you saying, "Hey, we need a testing tool, or we want to start A/B testing or experimentation," and then you have to go back to them and say, "Hey, look, you've got GA4, nice, but also you need all of this other behavioral insight stuff." How does that conversation typically play out?
So when we ideally start talking about the journey, right, which is basically your performance marketing journey, we try to find out what are the tech stacks. Do they have the GA4? Is the GA4 properly set up? What is the level of tracking that GA4 has? You know, how many events do they have? How many events do they track? All of these details are the prerequisites that we check across. And of course, then we basically introduce the platform saying that, while GA4, while your Google Search Console, while your Apps Flyer or Firebase is good to have, but there's a limit to how much data that we can devour from there. Right?
Yep.
However, from a platform perspective, it's more than just data. It gives you a heat map, it gives you your click maps, it gives you your recording of the views. All of these details come across when the platform is introduced. The benefits are being kind of narrated back to the client.
Have you ever had an example of where you've been using some sort of session recording or heat maps, and you've explained user behavior almost in real time in the playback, and you've just seen the client's face visibly go, "Oh, we should change that."
Not really, to be honest. I didn't have that kind of opportunity to kind of demonstrate on a live platform. But in terms of whenever I mean, this is the approach that we take at Axiom when we introduce CRO. We always understand the client's business pain area, and then we do a test campaign. So test campaign essentially helps us build the level of confidence the client has, in CRO after they see the results.
Okay, what does that typical client, like, well, I want to say briefing, but that how does Axiom like engage with the client when we've mentioned a couple of things. We've mentioned maturity, we've mentioned some tech stack stuff, and we've mentioned that the lifetime is typically around 4 years plus when you're working with a client. When you're engaging, what what does that like plan for you look like? Like, it's going to play out in a particular way. Yes, there'll be some changes throughout, but in general, it will follow a certain curve. What does that look like?
So in terms of once the client sends us the brief, okay, it's always the client sends us the brief. So once the
Okay.
client sends us the brief, we understand the brief, whether it's basically SEO heavy, it's your content heavy, it's UI UX heavy. Is there any kind of CRO component? So whenever they mention UI UX, the client has some sense of CRO. Even if it is primitive. That's where we get a chance to kind of pitch in our CRO capabilities. Then
Okay.
we understand if the client is basically a compliance client, or if a client is non-compliance client, because there are a lot of nitty-gritties that we need to kind of convince the IT, the compliance, ensure that the codes have been updated.
Yep.
Because without this details, CR is not going to move ahead. So we do all of that heavy lifting, understanding the entire journey, who's who within the client's network, to ensure that if the client decides to work with us, it becomes very easy to navigate through all of these prerequisites that we need.
Yeah, nice. And I can see why that is going to drive quite a lot of the behaviors, which will then come out later on as well. The question around experimentation then with those clients is experimentation has a lot of trial and error to it. When we base our hypotheses in the data, in the insights, in the quant and the qual, we can reduce that error margin. But how do you explain that to your clientele? If you have a losing test or a losing variant, what is the impact, and how do you explain to them that actually it should build trust rather than lose trust in the process, rather than them just defaulting back to safer tactics?
Gotcha. So essentially, I mean, before we even start introducing the CRO, we just need to get the sense of how adaptive they are to CRO. Is it only at the level of point of contact that we are talking to, or is it resonating back to the upper level? These are some of the touch points that we touch around based on our discussion or in a question and answer session. We always encourage our clients to do an experiment, and with our partners, we do that experiment. So the client does not carry that risk. It's basically the agency, like an Axiom, and a partner like VWO carry that risk. Okay, and then we go back and we say, hey, we have the approval to do a test campaign. If it works, great. There is a probability that we move ahead. In case if the test does not work, I'll give you an example of one of our fashion client, where the urgency message that we basically pushed across did not work well. And when we basically check why it did not work well, is because the brand trust and the product trust was weakened, and CRO optimization amplified that, and that's why basically backfired and that test did not work. When we check the client's reviews and ratings, it was way below industry standards, and that's why basically our CRO, that particular test, did not take it up. I mean, we discussed with the client, right, and we said that let's fix the basics and then move on to this.
Okay, so there was, just to understand that, was it like a social proof campaign or something for the brand, but then it turned out that like pushing them to take an action
Yes,
had a negative impact because of the trust they already had in that brand, or they weren't expecting that from that sort of brand.
exactly. And CRO basically amplified that, and that backfired.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Good example. Good to know. And then you mentioned as well the communications piece of how you're communicating the winning test, even the losing test. We say losing. I always like to think of every test as a win, whether it's through the actual uplift or through all of the learnings that you take from these tests. So literally in the example you just gave me, you learned so much from the test failing, whereas if the test had been successful, you might not have learned those things. So I imagine from that previous example, there was quite a few iterations of the experimentation program that came off the back of a losing test. And it probably has led to even more insights and growth for that brand.
No, absolutely. So every losing test, I mean, we haven't had much of the losing test, to be honest. So it's one of the examples. So we went back to the client honestly with a very transparent details. We said that, hey, we experimented this based on our mutual agreement, but this test did not work across, and these are our hypotheses. So when we basically cross-checked, we found out that the reviews and ratings, were very poor. Hence, the brand trust and the product trust was poor, which essentially kind of got amplified through our CRO optimization, and hence, it did not work for us. This is the learning that the client, really loved it. Right? They saying, "Oh, okay, then I need to kind of go back to my basics and fix that before I invest in CRO." I said, "Absolutely right."
This is a really, really nice example of an experimentation program where it can look like something has gone wrong, but actually it's gone right. And it's going back to those basics, making sure that the infrastructure is in place before actually trying to build on top of that. So really, really cool example. The It kind of leads nicely into my next question, which is around, as you see these clients mature, how does it impact the effectiveness of all of the other channels, the paid media, the SEO, any of the life cycle in marketing, for example, where all of a sudden, because they're able to test stuff, and they start going, oh, let's just test it, or here's an idea, let's just test it. Do you, and I guess in some way going through a prioritization matrix of that, of should we test it? How do you see that impact other like surrounding departments or channels?
Such a brilliant question, Devon. Wow. So we do that optimization, and let me give you an example. So one of our clients where we manage a lot of advertising. So it's SEO, it's content, it's CRO, and paid campaigns as well. Now, most important thing is that if the CRO is going to get leveraged, or the benefits are going to get passed on to different channels. The first thing that we need to know is that the landing page that is getting optimized or targeted is the same across all channels. One. If it's basically different, right? So from a landing page perspective, SEO is targeting a different set of keywords to a different landing page. Performance marketing, Google search, a landing page is different, okay, or a destination URL is different. Then the whole landscape of optimization changes. But sake of simplicity, let's take an example that my website landing page is the target landing page for all my channels. Then the beauty enhances of CR, right? Everybody benefits. It's like I'm killing, two birds with one stone.
Yep.
So when we optimize, we essentially take the data of all the channels through GFO. We understand that what is the traffic coming from direct, what is the traffic coming from paid channels, what is the traffic coming from organic, what traffic is coming from social, with that single landing page in mind. And once we optimize that landing page, the benefits is passed across to all of these channels. Now, what is the percentage? Since I come from, my heart lies into SEO and content, so I would love to see as a winning strategy for SEO. But I also come from a performance background as well, so I understand performance, which is your paid marketing, equally well. That's right. So this is how we optimize to basically pass on the benefits across the channels.
That's nice. And it leads to another question, because you mentioned how it starts impacting all the channels and people can see that impact. Do you ever see a like a pre CRO and a post CRO mentality, where like the impact on planning, like annual planning or annual budgeting, the what the campaign calendars look like? Because I imagine they go from a very sort of like fixed status to almost a lot more agile status. of, okay, we're going to do this then, but if that changes, we'll then, like, if A, then B sort of statements start appearing a lot more. Is that a thing?
I haven't honestly come across such of thing with my clients, because usually the budgets are always being capped across. So the CMO and the CFO will basically lock in the budget for that particular campaign, whether it's basically a total advertising campaign, which is your offline plus digital, and in digital specific for performance, for content, for SEO, and for CRO. All of these is being capped at a top level. But the most important thing that we go back to the client and we say, hey, it's a great budget, you know, uh, we would love to work with this budget. My only humble submission is that how much would you be willing to kind of share the percentage of the budget for experimentation or slash innovation? What do you think? We ask the client. So the client says, hey, I mean, while getting, so say for example, it's basically a 10 million, so getting a 1 million budget is a huge budget. But if it's 1 million and getting $10,000 of the budget, or $100,000 of a budget, sorry, is also a big challenge. So we need to kind of put a very strong case of what kind of experiment are we going to do, or what kind of innovation are we going to bring across the table for the client to kind of internally sell and convince the CFO and the CEO to give that 100,000 out of extra.
Yep.
Then the client come back and say, oh, okay, so you're going to enhance my conversion rate optimization. So what is the uplift that I'm going to get out of my conversion? Because I know that this is the question is going to come back.
Yep.
So we keep it here. You know, that's the reason I said it's an experiment and an innovation budget. Okay, so that we can invest, we can keep testing across. And this also depends what is the life cycle of the client's digital journey. Is basically the maturity. If the client is extremely matured in its journey, it's much more easier. If the client is very native or primitive in its journey, it's tough. So the budgets are set. It's how we articulate and get that additional 10%, 20% to improvise and introduce the CRO and keep testing across the journey is how we basically position it.
Okay. So it comes as, I don't want to call it a sort of like premium piece of what you're offering, but it's that piece where it takes a lot more convincing that it is important to be doing this continual optimization and reinvestment into everything that you're doing. It was a really interesting point that I'll call out there, was where you said about moving the mindset from, hey, this is just going to increase your revenue, to, no, we're reinvesting. This is like an R&D budget in a way for all of the teams that are driving revenue, because we don't typically talk about R&D for like the marketing teams, but it's very much a real thing, which kind of keeps the brand alive as well. So I have a lot of conversations with like the content teams or content management teams, and we talk about this whole idea of having to rehash or rehash a whole website and a big brand refresh every 3 or 4 years. Yet what I'm seeing is the people who are really adopting experimentation, these companies are really, they're just evolving over time. So the need to do a whole refresh, a whole website overhaul, is more rare. So it's interesting to hear about how you're positioning the budget as more of a sort of like research development and continuous development piece. I really like that. It's fun. And actually a hell of a lot more strategic than we might see on that first order piece. The question I wanted to ask around that that as well is where you are impacting lots of other teams. How are you getting them to like consistently feed into experimentation programs as well? So like what does that cross team collaboration look like and what feeds the backlog?
Interesting question. Uh, so if the agency like us as has an account, okay, which manages all of the SEO, CRO, content, and performance marketing, it's much more easier to control versus multiple agencies managing different things. It gets a little bit chaotic. Not that it's not achievable, but it gets chaotic. Here is how we basically go back to the client. So if it is basically all of the client's budget or the services that we offer is with Axiom, it's pretty straightforward. The entire control is with us. So team coordination, whether it's SEO, whether it's content, whether it's UI UX slash CRO, performance marketing, digital PR, everything is in control because it's our team navigating to these teams. We have this process in place. On the other flip side is, let's say that we are the CRO agencies. The SEO agency is agency A, the performance agency is B. That's where the challenge starts. Because CRO is also looked as a threat. Let me tell you why. Now, for another agency, if I'm going to introduce CRO, it's technically their media spends is going to come down, right?
Yeah, okay.
So it becomes a challenging. So you will have to, as an agency, will have to kind of convince and ensure that the client gives us that mandate to push back to the agency saying that we need to experiment. So navigating with different agencies has a different challenge. I mean, there is no foolproof strategy that anyone has put in place. We just have to navigate.
Just a question around reducing the media spend there. Is that from the sense of needing to take some of the budget, like you mentioned earlier, and moving it towards CRO? Or is it from the perspective of if the website is converting higher, then you don't need as much media spend on the basis of a higher conversion means that the revenue is leveling out naturally rather than you having to drive a load of traffic. Is
It's the
it okay? Yeah, I thought it was when you said it, and I was like, oh, that's such a good point. So
it's the
that's nice. I'd never thought of it in terms of it threatening other people working within that area, and that's not just agencies. That would be internal teams' budgets as well. That's a level of politics I'd not really thought about. Fascinating. I'll take that one with me through life. That's one of those aha moments. Nice. A question on the MENAT region then, in terms of capabilities and what brands should look for in an experimentation program specifically. Um, what would you say from beginner to advanced the platform or platforms need to be to support their journey, or maybe even at each stage of their journey?
So the tech stacks that we essentially look at is basically a proprietary tech stack that we have. The third party tech stack that we invest in, such as VWO, and within the CRO platform, the capability of deep analysis, heat maps, click maps, all of these details are so important to kind of optimize the CRO journey for the client. And of course, the AI capability as well.
With obviously, I want to jump on the AI point there, but I will come back to it a little bit later. In fact, no, let's just dive into it then. The rise of AI.
Yeah.
Um, how it's kind of reshaping marketing, and kind of content creation, personalization, decision making. What what do you think? What's the impact on conversion rate optimization specifically, or what do you project?
In my opinion, I mean, we work with a lot of AI platforms. We have built our own AI bot that we use extensively. But in my opinion, when it basically gets resonated or integrated with conversion rate optimization, it enables faster hypothesis generation, smarter personalization, and better decision making. If we can automate the testing of multiple variants and target those content very specifically, right? We can definitely see an uplift in conversions for any clients. Is the way I look how AI is going to kind of leveraging for CR, or CR is going to leverage AI.
Okay, you mentioned a bot in there as well, a proprietary like AI essentially that you've built at Axiom. Can you share a bit more information around that or not?
Well, I can share that information with you because my bot is essentially built on a lot of different platforms that we kind of integrated, and is essentially used to basically do a persona building and segmentation for our clients.
Okay, so to understand that correctly, you're orchestrating multiple different technologies, or shall we say, data sources that are then feeding in to your agent, I guess. That then creates a really strong like segment slash personalized profile that you can then test upon.
That's right. That's right. Like classic example, if there's a new credit card launch by a bank, and they come back to us and say that, hey, we would want to basically target these credit card users. This is the new credit card that we are basically launching. It's a high net income worth credit card. What is the kind of data that you can provide us that who we can target across? And based with different data sources, using our my bot, we basically have those testing done.
Great. That's a really interesting use case. I'm working on quite a few AI ideas at the moment, so I'm always interested to hear more about what people are doing and how they're doing it. I do see the future of agencies in particular becoming this very sort of these masters of every single company's AI agents, because we're always talking about agentic AI now. We're building one here, someone's building one over there. No one's really talking about how do they all connect. Yes, you can have like MCP servers, stuff like that, which will allow our AIs to talk, but no one's talking about it from an area of expertise outside of their own tool. But that's where agencies are going, hey guys, guess what? We've been integrating tools for years, and now what we're doing is orchestrating your agents instead. So I generally think that role is going to become like the perfect role almost for agencies in assisting their clients. Say, hey, look, here's your tech stack. Here's all of the agents that how they all tie together properly to deliver value beyond all of the sum of the parts. So interesting to see how you're using it there, and to see my view starting to play out in real life. Speaking about projecting, in the next 5 years, how do you expect experimentation adoption over the MENAT region to evolve? Like, is there a mindset shift that needs to happen among senior leaders, or what will that take for it to become quite a mature market in experimentation?
In terms of the adaptation, as I said, that there's a lot of education required because awareness is there. It's just that the deeper level of understanding needs to kind of be educated to the clients. So I think when a high spenders like an FMCG or a banking segment understand CRO at a deep level, but there are a lot of other brands like your e-commerce brands which also understand. So the level of maturity will definitely grow as and when a self-learning is being initiated. Agencies like us and partners like you, basically we go joint in across and we keep educating the clients. That's how the maturity is increases. The whole idea is that the way I'm looking at it is that the way SEO has evolved and matured, how performance marketing has evolved and matured. I would like to also see of how CRO gets matured, and it's also a part of any marketeer's marketing mix.
Yes.
This is how I see, it's getting evolved over a period of
Okay.
time.
It
But
makes
there's a
makes
lot of
sense.
education.
Yeah, and I guess that's where tools like VWO really do come into play, of that market education piece being so key, and then working alongside partners to actually build that inside the marketing community or even the product community as well, on how the experimentation mindset as well as the platforms that underpin it can really help in that marketing mix. So on that kind of note of community and learning, what's something that you're currently learning, work related or not, like, and anything cool that you're working on at the moment?
So professionally, I keep learning. Okay, and personally also I keep learning. Personally, I mean, which are the companies that is good, which has a high kind of growth rate, all of that.
This is the angel investor coming back out, isn't it?
That's from a personal side, but from a professional side, I basically keep learning about the AI, the different AI platforms, how to kind of evaluate any brand on your generative engine platforms, how they are performing. So these are the things that I keep learning through YouTube channels, through blogs, you know, industry experts. How is the industry moving? What is the shift happening within the industry? Are there any kind of new technology industries adopting? All this is through ongoing learning, and this helps when you are talking to the client or to
Yes.
partners or just having a discussion.
I think I can guess what your answer will be on this. I was gonna ask, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? I feel like it's going to be like continuous learning. Always educate yourself on what's coming next. But I don't want to put words in your mouth.
So being with clients, it's always a nature that you keep talking. But how do you ask the relevant questions where the client you know talks more and you listen more and you make this notes? So I've been kind of practicing this. I've got to a certain level. Okay. So from a help perspective, yes, what are the kind of open-ended questions? What are the kind of close-ended questions that you ask clients? The clients kind of start talking and giving you more information to kind of build a case to go back to the client and saying this is how we can help you.
Nice. That active listening component
Yeah.
has such a big impact, and it goes beyond just listening, but to that hearing and understanding and the empathy that comes with that. So it's a nice piece of advice. I hope all of our listeners take that one with them. um, speaking of which, if you were starting your career today, um, again, and let's say with a focus on optimization and experimentation, what is the one thing that you would do differently, if there's anything?
One is basically convince the client uh, to go for the experiment. because a lot of clients hesitate because it's very risk averse. So I would definitely do differently, basically mitigate that risk and encouraging the client to go for a trial, an experiment before making a final decision.
Okay, so really starting to build that mentality of let's test it
Yeah,
or let's experiment first before this decision making,
absolutely.
and helping the client understand that.
In terms of if there is no risk to the client, as I said previously, right? I mean, if I go back to the client and say, hey, you are doing a significant amount of spend, if I were to kind of evaluate how we can add value to improve your conversion, would you be able to give us a chance? Absolutely. We pick up a few experiments and we go back to the client and say, hey, this is what we did. This is how we can help. A few of the case studies and example goes a long way. They might say, hey, right now I don't have the budget. That's fine. Eventually, when the budget kind of opens up, they'll definitely invite us for a discussion.
Nice, and I think that's as you mentioned, like early on in the podcast, that idea of the agency and the vendor are able to shoulder that level of risk because we understand the value it can deliver. So the risk is actually very minimal for us. And it's how do we pass that risk mitigation onto the client? So this is nice. What's and I have this problem all the time, right? I can never, no matter how many times I explain to friends and family what I do, they can never understand what I do. So what's the one thing your like non-industry friends just do not understand about your job?
You don't understand anything.
They don't understand. That's it.
So all they basically understand is that I'm in advertising, okay, and I'm in digital advertising. So the simplest way I explain is that the ad that you see on TV is similarly the ad that you see on the internet.
Brilliant.
That's what you manage. Keep it simple.
Nice. And then AI, we've spoken about it quite a bit in depth. What do you think it's going to take over in the next 3 years? Like, what's going to no longer be handled by people, but it will just be purely AI, or at least maybe human in the loop, but you will all rely on AI for it.
Like I mean, let's take back the journey, right? Of when the telephone was invented, then the TV came in, then the internet came in, and now it's basically the AI. So the way I look at it is that AI is playing a very significant role in voice. So anything which is basically to do with voice, it will replace humans to a great extent. Like a simple cold calling, like a simple service calling, all of these can be replaced by AI. And as we speak, it's being experimented.
Yep. The telephony side of stuff,
Yes,
where it's the same questions, almost a templatized set of questions, responses,
exactly. Exactly.
and then with the right data models backing that, it could be a very interactive conversation without needing humans. Do you think we'll lose the human touch, like, and that in itself will then get re-optimized back in for that human experience when we talk about the UX of these journeys? Like, it's one thing to talk to a AI agent, but it's another thing to talk to a human. Do you think at any point we might do like a full circle thing, or maybe we see like the premium level of customer experience will be a human to human interaction?
I would think that the premium engagement would be human to human. That's what I think. I mean, at a certain point, I mean, AI becomes too. What's the right word? It's monologue, right? It's basically
Yep.
on the template. Like, say, for example, if you want to discuss certain ideas, innovations, which is outside of the template or outside of the book, It's only man to man, human to human can have that discussion.
Do you, do you think at some point, if AI passes the Turing test, that we won't know that we're just talking to the AI bot anymore because it will sound so human? Because we're getting there. We're getting there quite quickly, right?
It is. I mean, I receive so many phone calls. I mean, it's really hard to say. It's really hard to say. Whether we are speaking to actually an AI or you're speaking to a real human. Eventually, in the conversation, you figure that out. Yeah, it's replacing.
On that note, because if we're replacing humans with AI, that's typically going to be, if we follow the money, there's a revenue impact on that. What is one CRO metric that you wish people would stop obsessing over?
Uplift in conversions.
this one's so nice. When people say to me, "Oh, Devon, I want the uplift in conversions," I'm like, "Oh, it's really easy. Just move everything so it costs $0.
Yeah.
Like, just drop the price to zero, give it away for free, and you're going to have like mad conversion uplift."
No,
And
there's
then they'll
always
go,
a number that we will have to give to the client to kind of, and of course, it's an estimation. So if you say if you're going to invest an X number of X number of testings that you're going to do, you will see an X number of uplift. So we do that math and we do that calculation and ensure we basically meet or exceed that expectation.
"Okay, no." So you build a buffer zone in, so you know you can look good.
Exactly.
Brilliant. And then the final question: what is a dream or a goal that you want to achieve over the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you want to be?
So I want to basically, I mean, I've been into tech, I've been into digital, I've been into, the investing side of things. I would want to move more onto the investment side. You know,
Okay.
so that's my goal. I hopefully, I mean, let's see how soon that happens, and also basically, start consulting and training the new, the founders.
Right.
Not
Okay. So
about
really moving into
investments,
that.
how to kind of, invest in digital.
Okay. So you'd be coaching people on how to become an angel investor and what to look for and how
Not
to
the
how
angel
to.
investor, how to become the angel investor. So if a company is basically coming across as a founder to get the initial funding, and if
Yep.
some part of the money is going to get invested into digital, that's where I will basically add value.
Okay. Okay. Nice. This is a really cool goal, and it's good that you know exactly where you're going with that. Cool. Well, Mo, thank you so much for sharing your perspective on how experimentation is helping organizations, what you think the state of the market is, how you see the MENAT region and its future growth. It's been really, really cool to share this time with you. I've learned a lot, which is always great. So, and I hope all of our listeners will also learn a lot. Thank you to the audience for tuning in. It's been great to have you here. If you'd like more insights from industry leaders, be sure to subscribe to the BWO podcast and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes. Mohammed, once again, thank you so much for spending the time and taking the time out of your day to be with us. Some really, really interesting topics there that we've discussed.
Thank you, Devon. It was a pleasure. Thank you for inviting.